Okay, it's now 10 a.m. I would like to welcome everybody to this Planning Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Tim Ball and I'm Chair of the committee. I will now ask officers on the top table to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Karina Haskins from Democratic Services.
Hello, I'm Christopher Griggs-Vathan. I'm a team leader in the development management team.
Hello, my name's Simon Elias. I'm from the Council's legal team.
Can I remind councillors and members of the public to switch their phones off or to silent during this meeting? The meeting is being filmed and the recording will be available on the council's website. Anybody speaking that does not wish to be filmed should make themselves known to the camera operator. We need a vice chair for this meeting. Can I propose Councillor Ian Paulson to take the vice chair for this meeting? Okay, seconded. Is that carried? That's carried. Emergency evacuation procedure, please.
Thank you, Chair. If a continuous alarm sounds, you must evacuate the building and proceed to the assembly point. From this room, you follow the illuminated green signs to the exit using either the marble staircase at the end of the building nearest to Bath Abbey or the main staircase. Please do not use the lifts. The assembly point is in Orange Grove on the green outside Brown's restaurant. Thank you.
Apologies for absence of the substitutions.
Apologies from Councillor Paul Crossley. Councillor John Leach is substituting. Apologies from Councillor Deborah Collins and Councillor Ruth Malloy is substituting.
Thank you. Can I welcome John?
Apologies from Councillor Fiona Gawley. Councillor Ruth Malloy is substituting.
Okay, thank you. Can I welcome John Leach, this committee's first time sitting here? Can I also point out Councillor Anne Morgan is observing this morning's meeting, who will be standing in future meetings. Declarations of interest. Yes, I have an interest to declare in item 2, St Michael's Doctors Surgery Walling Close. I will withdraw from the meeting on this item. I am a patient at this practice. I don't believe I have an interest, but I'm going to withdraw anyway. Urgent business, there's no urgent business. Items of public statements and questions. Karina.
Thank you. Speakers will be called to speak immediately after the case officers made their presentation about the application. The order of speakers and time allowed for speaking will be as follows. Any objectors will be allowed 3 minutes. Supporters will go next and be allowed a total of 3 minutes. Ward councillors not on the committee who have indicated they wish to speak will be allowed to do so for a maximum of 5 minutes. The speeches will be timed on the screens, so you'll see the timer going round to indicate how long you have left. Thank you.
Okay, minutes of the last meeting. Can I see those as a correct record, please? All agree? Eleanor? Do you wish to abstain from voting? Okay, others abstained. Okay, and the first item on the agenda, can I invite Angus Harris to present his report on land adjacent to Greystones, Ashgrove, Peasdown, St John.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning all. So first item up on today's agenda, we're looking at a permission in principle for residential development, 3 to 5 dwellings on the land adjacent to Greystones, Ashgrove, at the top of Peasdown, St John. Site location plan provided, outlining the area in red. So you can see residential property Eastfield to the north, Greystones and more to the south, and a few on the other side of the road to the east. This is the only plan provided, as this is a permission in principle, so there are no extra drawings at this stage. There's no fleshed out design. This is an aerial imagery of the site, again outlining it in red, a little star to indicate the nearest bus stop, and a context plan as well to show the most of Peasdown and just where the site is in, again, marked in red. Photographs of the site. So this one was actually taken from the first floor window of one of the buses. Inside the site now, looking up to the northeast, so you can see a couple of the neighbouring properties. Another different angle, again looking back towards the access from the furthest corner of the site. And from the northwest edge of the site, looking out to the northwest, where On a slightly larger scale photograph, you'd be able to see a little bit of Tunley, a little bit of Timsbury as well, just over to the left side of the frame. A street view photograph, so this is just moving into the 50 mile an hour zone, where the 20 mile an hour of the village turns into the 50. As requested, I've included a little bit of legislation up on screen as well, so apologies, these next few slides will be quite wordy. Permissions in principle, just to very briefly cover this, we can only consider a few points. We can only consider the location, the land use and the amount of development. So we are quite restricted. We can't give consideration to finer details of design, highways matters, ecology or whatnot at this stage. It's really location, land use and amount. The report includes quite a lot of information on green belt, grey belt, tilted balance. I've included some legislation up on screen as well. So just to read a few of the key points here, this is directly from the MPPF. Land in the green belt comprising some land that does not strongly contribute to any of the purposes, A, B or D, as quoted. Sorry, I should just say this is the definition of grey belt. So when we're deciding if something is grey belt or not, this is the definition we're using. So the purposes as quoted, A, B and D, to check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas, prevent neighbouring towns merging, and to preserve the setting, special characters, the setting and special character of historic towns. Interesting footnote, villages should not be considered as large built-up areas for the purposes of these tests. Moving on, where something is considered to be grey belt, the MPPF sets out that it should not be regarded as inappropriate in the green belt where all of these tests apply. So if something is grey belt, if there's a demonstrable unmet need for the type of development, and if the development is in a sustainable location. Just to recap for the context of this site, the application is found to be compliant with all of these tests up on screen, so it is considered to be grey belt. As it's grey belt, it meets A. There is, as the council does not have 5-year housing land supply, there is a demonstrable unmet need for that type of housing, and the development is found to be a sustainable location. So we consider it to pass these tests as well, meaning it's not inappropriate development in the green belt. A little bit of extra legislation here where the tilted balance comes in, just to cut through a lot of the wording up on screen. Where our policies are found to be out of date, where we have no 5-year housing land supply at the moment, we are applying a presumption in favour of sustainable development, and we have to apply the test at the very bottom of the screen there in bold. Any adverse impacts of doing so, or any adverse impacts of the development, would need to significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the scheme if it was to be used or refused. The officer recommendation for this one is to permit.
Time for speakers to speak now. Can I invite John Rooney, the agent, to put in the application, please? Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. As members who attended the last committee will recall in relation to the site at Stowy, the permission in principle route to planning consent is a 2-stage process with land use, scale and location considered now, and all of the technical details to follow as a separate application. A previous submission for limited infilling was refused on this site at appeal, the inspector concluding that the site fell outside the village and that it would harm the openness of the greenbelt by virtue of sprawl of the built-up area of the village and encroachment into the countryside. As with the Stowy application, the current proposal is submitted as grey belt development, following significant changes to the MPPF last year. Though the Parish Council objected to this current proposal, this is a repeat of the same objection submitted for the previous application, that it would not amount to limited infill, and does not engage with the grey belt issue, nor the substantial shortfall in the 5-year housing land supply, currently at 2.5 years. For the site to be grey belt, it cannot contribute strongly to 3 of the 5 purposes of the green belt: preventing the merging of towns, preserving historic settlements, and preventing the urban sprawl of large built-up areas. The previous inspector considered only the last of these to be relevant, but this was before government guidance clarified that only towns and cities, not villages, should be considered as large built-up areas. Peastone St John is designated as a village in the local plan, and so the site makes no contribution to this purpose. This is backed up by the West of England Greenbelt assessment, which stated that the wider area made limited or no contribution to the prevention of urban sprawl and preserving the setting of historic towns, and only a moderate contribution to preventing towns merging, though this assessment was made prior to the government clarification that this purpose does not relate to villages. Greybelt sites also need to be reasonably sustainably located, and the application site is clearly in a more sustainable location than the scheme passed at Stowe. The site adjoins a settlement boundary of a large village. There are bus stops almost immediately outside, and services at Peasdown are within convenient walking and cycling distance. The Greybelt designation was brought in to address the chronic national shortage of housing, and only comes into play when councils do not have a sufficient supply of housing. The development of multiple smaller sites such as this one, spread across the district and built out by small and medium-sized enterprises, will have a lesser impact overall on both the Greenbelt and existing residents than large sites developed by volume house builders. We are already seeing inspectors approving sites of 400 plus houses as Greybelt development. For these reasons, it is hoped that members can support this permission in principle scheme for 3 to 5 dwellings on Greybelt land, which will make a small but significant contribution to re-establishing that housing supply. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We now have a statement from Councillor Karen Walker, which will be read by Karina Haskins.
Thank you, Chair. So, a statement from Councillor Karen Walker, who's one of the ward councillors for the area. The land in question today is located in the Greenbelt, located on the end of the largest village in Somerset. The A367, which once ran through the settlement of Peasdown St John, was part of the route to Lincoln from Exeter, which formed the Roman Fossway. Evidence also shows that Roman and Saxon villages were once located in Peasdown, with several entries in the Domesday Book of 1086. You are here today to determine whether planning in principle should be granted and to establish whether this land is suitable for development. I wish to point out several reasons why planning in principle should not be approved. As I previously mentioned, the land is in the Greenbelt. Why shouldn't we build on Greenbelt land? Conservationists claim building on protected areas of countryside swallows up farmland and wildlife habitats while increasing air pollution and flood risk. Exceptional circumstances exist to justify changes to Greenbelt boundaries. The Strategic Policy Making Authority should be able to demonstrate that it has examined fully all other reasonable options for meeting its identified need for development. This will be assessed through the examination of its strategic policies, which will take into account the preceding paragraph, and whether the strategy A makes as much use of possible suitable brownfield sites and underutilised land, B optimises the density of development in line with the policies, in including whether policies promote a significant uplift in minimum density standards should be tailored to the specific characteristics of the area, including its built environment, infrastructure and community need. When defining Greenbelt boundaries, plans should A ensure consistency with the development plan strategy for meeting identified requirements for sustainable development, B, not include land which is unnecessary to keep permanently open. C, when necessary, identify areas of safeguarded land between the urban area and the Greenbelt in order to meet longer-term development needs stretching well beyond the plan period. D, make clear that the safeguarded land is not allocated for development at the present time. Planning permission for the permanent development of safeguarded land should only be granted following an update to a plan which proposes the development. E, be able to demonstrate that Greenbelt boundaries will not need to be altered at the end of the plan period. And F, define boundaries clearly using physical features that are readily recognisable and likely to be permanent. Proposals affecting the Greenbelt. When considering any planning application, local planning authorities should ensure that substantial weight is given to any harm to the Greenbelt, including harm to its openness. Inappropriate development is, by definition, harmful to the Greenbelt, and should not be approved except in very special circumstances. Very special circumstances will not exist unless the potential harm to the greenbelt by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm resulting from the proposal is clearly outweighed by other considerations. Development in the greenbelt is inappropriate unless one of the following exceptions applies. A, buildings for agriculture and forestry. B, the provision of appropriate facilities in connection with the existing use of land or a change of use, including buildings for outdoor sport, outdoor recreation, cemeteries and burial grounds and allotments, as long as the facilities preserve the openness of the greenbelt and do not conflict with the purposes of including land within it. C, the extension or alteration of a building, provided that it does not result in disproportionate additions over and above the size of the original building. Please may I ask you to consider the reasons why a planning officer in 2023 and a planning inspector appointed by the Secretary of State in 2024 both refused and turned down the appeal brought against this council. The main reason for not supporting both application in 2023 and the appeal in 2024 have been highlighted in my statement: the harm to the greenbelt, the harm to its openness and the inappropriateness. Thank you for your time. And that was a statement from Councillor Karen Walker.
Thank you, Karina. Now, questions from officers. Ian Horsell.
Thank you, Chair. It's a procedural question, really, about the decision-making process. So the application for permission in principle is for 3, 4 or 5 dwellings. So if we were to grant this permission in principle, we have given the applicants 3 options that they could pursue at the technical detail stage. If, during the subsequent debate that we'll be having, it was deemed that perhaps 5 or 4 is too many, would we have to refuse it outright, or could we give a steer to delegate to permit for a lessened quantum of houses at the detailed stage?
I'll just jump in on that one if that's okay. Obviously the application in front of you today is for 3, 4 or 5, and that's what you should be considering, what's in front of you. If we get to a point in the debate where a particular number within that range is the committee find that acceptable, but another number within that range unacceptable, potentially we could consider, one option you could consider would be to defer the application for the officer to seek an amendment to the description of development. That would then need to be reconsulted with the public, because it would be a change to the description of development, and a sort of amended assessment brought back to a subsequent planning committee meeting. I would say if you wanted to change the number outside of what's already in the range, then I would say that's not possible to do, and you would need to refuse the application if that's the case.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm glad you brought this application to committee, because it raises quite a lot of important questions of principle. First question, do we have a grading on this as agricultural land? What has its previous use been? Because it's not just a question of the impact on the greenbelt and the fact it's outside the housing development boundary, but the fact it's loss of arable land. So do we have any more information about that? Secondly, I was under the impression that the previous government had set a not fewer than kind of policy, that you should not permit underuse. So does that have any relevance? Is it still enforced? To the question of whether we have 2 mansions here, like the ones the other side of the road, or 5 much needed 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom houses that people can downsize into or start off their life together in, where we know there's an established need for 2-bed accommodation.
So starting with your first question, agricultural land, we only know it to be graded as 3. We don't have information grading it as either 3A or 3B. It's just 3 as far as we are aware today. For your second question, you're correct. There is a paragraph in the MPPF that seeks to ensure that we make effective use of land. That's paragraph 130, where, yes, as you say, we need to make effective use of land. So we would want to accommodate as many or the appropriate number of houses on a plot as should be.
Just also worth adding that the number of bedrooms and the mix and the scale of those dwellings would be a matter for the stage 2 technical consent, so not something you're considering today.
Councillor Malloy.
Oh, sorry, I've forgotten the third question. I'm also not clear about the status of that little lane track that goes down the side of the site that we walked along a little bit. And are we not supposed to consider A, the status of the lane and whether it's public right of way, and B, access for vehicles coming in and out of the A367, possibly in front of 2 parked buses?
The little lane you're mentioning is an underused alternative access for the field. As we saw on site, it's pretty overgrown. It doesn't currently have vehicles moving up and down it. My understanding is the proposal would not affect that lane. The proposal, I'm not connected to the monitor anymore, but the red line boundary leaves that lane untouched. Your second query about cars pulling onto the road, there could potentially be 2 parked buses there, which would bring traffic to a stop in both directions in that particular case. It is a very straight piece of road with a slight bend in it, as we could see on the street view photograph slightly earlier, but it has good visibility in both directions, and it is right next to the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit change, 20 to the 50. So we don't currently have concerns for the access at this time. Again, the technical details phase will have more details of access. We'll consult highways in a more formal capacity, and we'll give due assessment to those matters at that time.
Councillor Malloy.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to understand a bit more about how the importance of being a village, because technically Peasdown St John is a village, according to Councillor Walker, the largest in Somerset, and so is that to do again with the definition of or conditions that apply in defining whether the land can be used to be developed in grey belt? Can you explain that again, the significance of being a village or not being a village in this case? Thank you.
I'll just bring the wording back up on screen, bear with. So it's this wording here. So when we are assessing if something is grey belt or not, the site would need to not strongly contribute to the purposes up on screen. I think what you're referring to there is A, to check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas. Where Peasdown is a village, it's defined as a village. It specifically should not be considered as a large built-up area. That's the wording at the bottom of the screen there. That's taken directly from the government's planning practice guidance page, which provides quite a lot of helpful guidance about assessing these contributions. But very specifically, we should be discounting Peasdown as a large built-up area for that purpose. The second thing to mention on that point is, even if you did find Peasdown to be a large built-up area for that purpose, the site would need to strongly contribute to that purpose. Which is, again, quite a steep test. It's not just does it contribute at all, it's does it have a strong contribution.
Councillor Leach.
Thank you, Chair. We know the agricultural grading is now grade 3 for that field. Do we know what it's actually been used for each of the past 3 or 5 years?
I don't actually. Just at the moment, it's just overgrown grass. At the moment, it's unused. It's got a fence line along the back edge, so it's not open with the rest of the field. So it's not used as one with the fields behind. But no, I only know it as in its current state, which is just overgrown grass, underutilised.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Angus. On that point of the grade, why is there no subgrades given for this, 3A or 3B?
We just haven't got subgrades in our policy mapping. It just defines 1, 2 and 3. I'm not sure why, but that's just the information that we have as the council's official mapping.
But there's quite a significant distinction of grade 3 lands within the NPPF regarding whether it's 3A or 3B, which could be quite an important factor when we're determining applications like this. There is an important distinction there, but the council just hasn't re-undertaken those surveys. Again, I'm not sure why. I'm not sure who I would ask, to be honest. So I would be...
Might I be able to assist? So I might be able to assist.
Yeah.
Part of it is due to the fact that this is a permission in principle application, and with that, the legislation around permission in principle applications doesn't allow the local authority to request significant levels of extra information as we would with a normal planning application. So the mapping, as Angus said, that we've got across the whole district is quite high level, as it must be, because it covers the whole district and doesn't break down the distinction between 3A and 3B. And in an ordinary case of a planning application, we may ask the applicant to provide a classification report to make that distinction. But in this case, as I said, we're not able to do that. So there is uncertainty there, and you have to make the decision with that uncertainty. So it's potentially 3A or potentially 3B. And with planning applications, we never have perfect information, and this is one of those examples where we have an uncertainty that we have to deal with.
So, okay, so if I could apply significant weights to that, with the uncertainty between whether it's 3A or 3B, two distinct differences as far as the MPPF is concerned, I would sway on the cautious side and assume 3A, correct?
You're allowed to attach whatever weight you wish as a decision maker. All I would caution is that there are a number of factors, I think, in this case, such as the size of the site, the fact it's not part of a larger unit. I think you can weigh those. You should also weigh those factors in the value of that land as agricultural land. I think, but in terms of the actual grading of the land and its, fertility and all that that would go along with that, I think that is it's up to you as to decide how much weight you give that in light of that uncertainty.
Does the MPPF then specify a piece of land must be larger than a certain size before you apply the grading to it?
So I'll read what the MPPF says about agricultural land, because I think it's important not to misunderstand what the MPPF says about the best and most versatile agricultural land. It does define best and most versatile agricultural land as grades 1, 2 and 3A. And then in terms of decision making, it says that decision makers decisions should contribute to and enhance the natural and local environment by recognising the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside and the wider benefits from natural capital and ecosystem services, including the economic and other benefits of the best and most versatile agricultural land. And it also, in the context of plan making, it talks about where significant development of agricultural land is demonstrated, areas of poorer quality should be preferred to those of higher quality. What the MPPF does not say is that you should refuse planning permission on the best and most versatile agricultural land. It is one consideration of many, unlike other policy areas in the MPPF where it does direct you to refuse permission. It doesn't do that in this case. So it's a material factor, but you're not instructed to do one thing or the other with it.
Councillor Jackson.
Chair, I've been travelling past this site at least twice a week for about 20 years, and it seems to me it's always been used for grazing hay, though sometimes, for growing hay and fodder, which is of course extremely important in the current situation on our farms. But I have long ago seen sheep in this field, so it's never grown maize or wheat or anything like that that would make it high grade. I also should have asked in my questions, what's the status of this area in the placemaking plan?
In terms of its status, it's just defined as greenbelt land and agricultural grade 3 land. There are no other important designations to mention. It's not conservation area, it's not AONB, or I should say national landscape. It's not SSSI, there's no heritage assets of particular value. So as far as designations go, it's just greenbelt, it's outside housing development boundary, and it's agricultural grade 3. Those are the three of note.
Does anybody else have any burning questions? If not, the item is now open for debate. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. It's very difficult with these PIP applications because there's very little to go on. So we're really looking at some very broad information here. I am concerned about the greenbelt designation here. I'm also very concerned about the fact that it's outside of our housing boundary. Areas that really should be considered through a local plan and adjusted in a local plan before they're used for planning. I've mentioned the grade of the lands. Without clarification on whether it's 3A or 3B, I will come to the conclusion that, a cautious conclusion that perhaps it may be 3A, which puts a slightly different light on it in terms of the NPPF's designation. The issue of whether the merits outweigh the harm on this site are difficult to assess because it's a PIP application. Even the question of whether it demonstrates that it meets an unmet need, because if you're building two large mansions on there, that's not necessarily going to meet an unmet need. If you're going to build 5 two-bed houses, perhaps that does. But without that detail, it's very difficult to understand whether this will actually provide a merit. And so without any exceptional circumstances, I'm not supportive of this application.
Councillor Horsell.
Thank you. I think we've rather been thrown under one of those passing buses with this one because, you know, last year 2 houses were deemed to be unacceptable. Overnight, we get a change in national policy, even though our local policy, which is up to date until 2029, suggests that this is an unsuitable site to build houses on because it will destroy the openness of the green belt. But overnight it's become grey belt, and so we're now stuck with this quandary. Because we haven't got our 5-year housing land supply, we have to take the fact that it is now defined as grey belt with those caveats and conditions, and that carries considerable weight. So the argument is, last year 2 houses are unacceptable, all of a sudden we've been told that 5 is acceptable. Do we have to take it on the chin, accept that there will be harm to the openness, but on balance, we would see 5 dwellings. 5, given the density of the site or the size of the site, 5 modest-sized dwellings which may accommodate, obviously, the technical detail we won't know until then, but you know, they could be 3-4 bedroom houses, they could be family homes. If we were to look here, we could see peas down with some starter homes. So, you know, the 2 may have been just large super mansions which wouldn't have been necessarily as affordable. So, it's regrettable that the openness will be lost, but it is grey belt, and you know, it's a material consideration that indicates otherwise to the development plan that this is now grey belt, and as the government are directing and our officers are suggesting 5 dwellings would be acceptable. You should also note that in terms of the technical details, if we were to approve the permission in principle, you know, we do have that very mature hedgerow that runs along the eastern boundary, so there will still be some degree of there'll still be some ruralness about any development that takes place on there. So I think I would, well, I'll wait for the rest of the debate, but I would be reluctantly supporting the officer's recommendation.
Okay, before I call the next speaker, I have no motion yet. Councillor Simon.
Well, I'm happy to put a motion on the table, which is that we accept the officer's recommendation. I tend to take the view that in this sort of situation, the boundary for the village is effectively set by its bypass and the roundabout. So I'm slightly less worried about a development that is within that scope. I always tend to favour getting as much housing as possible. I would have preferred, in terms of the land use, which is one of the factors we are looking at, if there had been an application to make best use of the land, and that would be 5 dwellings. But I can see why the application doesn't want to invest yet in design and analysis to actually set that out. It certainly can't be 2 mansions because it's 3 to 5. I would like to see 5. I would like to see the possibility of a contribution to a revision of the speed limit so that vehicles approach the roundabout at a more respectable speed than 50. But those are all matters for the technical details, and I'm happy to support this recommendation.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Collins.
Yes, I'm happy to second the motion. I'd like to thank Angus for his very clear description of the legal position. I think Councillor Horsall sets it out very clearly. We are in a position now where the government guidance pushes us towards looking at this as a grey belt rather than as green belt for all the reasons the officer has set out. And I think, personally, I think we'd be on slightly dodgy ground, actually, not agreeing the permission in principle, having been given the advice by the officer. I also agree with Councillor Simon that we are in desperate need of houses, and therefore it's very difficult to see how the harms in this particular area would outweigh the benefits of getting those additional houses.
Councillor Warren.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit on the fence with this one. I'm not so concerned about the agricultural land there because it's a small bit. You're not getting a combine in it. You stuck with sheep, really. That's about your lot, I say, the size of it. So you're not going to farm it because you just can't get machines in it nowadays. Talk about mansion, I'm a bit concerned. I thought mansion was like Longleat House or something like that, not a house in Peasdown, a 4 or 5 bedroom house in Peasdown, which actually I think is more in keeping with this. You know, if it came forward, you had a choice of having 2 nice houses with gardens or 5 smaller ones, I'd go for 2 nice houses. If you look at what you already have there, not as to be fused in the past, and we're looking between 3 and 5 or whatever, you know, to me 5 there, with amongst what you've got there, is a bit higgledy-piggledy and too many. However, I don't think we've got any option. I think it is grey belt now, I hate to say, not green belt. You know, does the next bit along come in with it as well? I don't know. Probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So I think I'll have to go along with this. But I'm totally opposite to Simon, that I'd rather see a couple of nice houses there than a lot of smaller ones. But the reality is, what gets built there is what earns money, because you can't, you know, by the time you've got stamp duty and God knows what now, and seal money, it's actually quite hard to make any money building a house. So if we don't allow the developers to build what does make money, then nothing's going to get built. I think that's the reality. So we'll have to see what is most profitable. What is most profitable will come forward. But again, that's for another day.
Okay, a motion that's been moved and seconded. Councillor Jackson.
Well, I think it's very difficult, and I think that Councillor Hughes put his finger on it. We can't refuse this one because it's a PIP. I would felt much more comfortable about voting for an outline application, and I think it's very unfortunate that the applicant didn't do an outline application, which would have covered things like access, which worries me quite a lot. I, of course, as a card-carrying member of the Labour Party, can't possibly agree that it's better to have 2 large mansions there, which would make a lot of money, than 5 houses which would meet the known need, especially from the neighbourhood plans in Radstock and Westfield, and the survey work that's been done among our residents, for 2-bedroom affordable starter homes, or homes that older people could downsize into. And I mean, this would be an ideal site for accommodation for older people, because it's right on top of a bus stop, and the buses are pretty frequent, even though there are occasional glitches and breakdowns and all the rest of it. So I find it very difficult that we can't say, well, there's going to be harm to the green belt, it's outside the housing development boundary, it's loss of agricultural land, because these are not, you know, but they're outweighed by the benefits of having 5 or 4, reasonably priced houses which have met a known need in the Soma Valley, etc. It's very difficult. What I was wondering was, how close are the buildings in Dunkerton? Because if we permit this, we'll get salami slicing development in the Dunkerton direction, I think. Is it possible to just move the map so we can see where Dunkerton village lies in relation to it?
Unfortunately not. That's a screenshot of the map put into a PowerPoint file. Dunkerton, couple kilometres just up to the northwest. You have some development which follows the road directly. Yeah, again, about a kilometre up to the north. I'm estimating a bit there. But it's a suitable distance. It's not just off the edge of the map there.
The thing is, you've got the development over what they call the Prince of Wales, and the Prince of Wales bus stop, though the pub disappeared long ago, and you've got dwellings there. You've got the garage, and then you've got a terrace of workers' cottages. So this really I would have thought, was an infill site. I don't quite understand where the planning inspector's coming from.
Okay, are there any further speakers? As there are none, we have a motion to approve. Can I put that to a vote, please? Those in favour? And those against? That is carried 9-1. I now need to move from the chair. Can I invite Councillor Horsell will take the chair for the next item, please?
Here we go. It's just like old times, isn't it? All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 2, which relates to the St Michael's Doctor Surgery, Walling Close in Twerton. Angus, if you've stepped in for a page, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, for item number 2, just to preface this, I was not the case officer for this one. I'm just covering for a colleague today. So for item number 2, we're at St Michael's Doctor Surgery down in Twerton. We're looking at a change of use from Class E, the Doctor Surgery, into Class 4 HMO. Class C4 HMO, sorry. Just to start with some aerial imagery, the Doctor Surgery is the T or cross-shaped building just in the north of the image there. It's only a piece of the Doctor Surgery being filtered off today for the HMO, as outlined in red. And then a contextual image just there on the right, which shows a little bit more context. The site location plan provided, which shows the blue outline for the whole of the Doctor Surgery, and then again in red is the site itself. As this is a HMO, a few extra maps have been provided where we have undertaken the sandwiching and the density tests. So up on screen was screenshotted for the purpose of the sandwiching assessment. The HMOs as existing, which are current HMOs, these are licensed, are shown with a little purple dot on them. You should be able to see one over to the left of the frame and one over to the right, with the application site somewhat in the middle. Consideration has been given here to number 10. I can't show you my mouse on screen, unfortunately. Number 10 is the semi-detached property immediately to the left of the rightmost HMO, but where the car park and the suitable gap is left between the application site and number 10, in this case it's not considered to have been sandwiched between 2 HMOs. The concentration test now, so within the 100-metre radius, there are 4 HMOs, which would include the application site if permitted, so 3 existing. With 77 residential properties, that brings us to 5.2% concentration. Floor plans now. This is the existing ground floor plan, which has been just severed to show not too much of the Doctor Surgery. The building is the rectangular building, just over on kind of the left half. As proposed, I've included the full and then just a zoomed-in version of the same image, just to show a bit of context. On the leftmost image, you will note there is some outdoor amenity space up on the north, or the top edge of the image. It's not really outdoor amenity space, it's really just courtyard, which can be used for bike store, bin store. And then the image on the left is just a more zoomed-in version, which shows there's going to be a downstairs bedroom. It shows the severance between the doctor's surgery and the remaining doctor's surgery, with the kitchen dining room on the bottom half of the image. Existing and proposed first floor plan up on screen. It's already filtered into rooms. They will be modified slightly to provide 3 upstairs bedrooms and some bathroom spaces. Existing proposed elevations. So this is one of the entrances currently for the doctor's surgery. The entrance will remain. This particular door will remain there for the doctor's surgery, as it's been severed off on the inside. The main difference to note is the removal of the bay window upstairs and the addition of 2 windows to provide a window for each of the upstairs bedrooms. Side elevation, an old window is being removed, as it would just serve an walk-in wardrobe, and a flue is being added. This would be the front door for the main house, which is remaining. The main thing to note is the removal of the ventilation and extraction equipment over on the left side of the frame, and the addition of a new window on the top, the first floor. And then the most interesting elevation, which is the one that faces the direct neighbour. The existing 6 windows shown on the left, and then as proposed, it's too small to read the annotations on the presentation, I appreciate. All of the windows are annotated to be obscure glazed with fixed openings. Some photographs which show the courtyard space, so those extraction units will be removed, and that's where the bin and bike store will be for the property. The front, or the view from the car park, that bay window will be removed, as will some of the signage, and your 2 windows will go in up the top. And the right image again is of the front door for the HMO from the other side. A new window will be put up on the first floor there. Aerial imagery showing the 6-window elevation and its relationship with its nearest neighbour. We will come back to this image. The tilt window examples have been provided by the agent as just examples at this stage. We would condition proper details of these windows, the frame sizes, how much they'll open. The examples on screen are also transparent. We want obscure glazed. Some questions came up about some previous refusals on this site last year, so I've done a bit of spot the difference. The previous refusal is the first floor plan on the left, and this current application is the one on the right. The main difference to note is that a first floor bedroom in the centre of the previous refusal would only have been served by an obscure glazed window with a roof light for extra daylight, but it would have provided no outlook for the users of that bedroom. This has been revised now for this current application, so the bedrooms are at the top and bottom of the image, where they have transparent windows serving each of the bedrooms, and that obscure glazed window, is just serving bathroom spaces. There are some recommended conditions here, so the standard time limit and plans list, as well as a compliance condition for the provision of the bike store, as well as a pre-occupation condition for the EPC certificate improvements as proposed. We would also want to see the removal of permitted development rights, so no additional window openings can be formed in the neighbour-facing wall, and the pre-occupation condition to secure details of those tilt windows with obscure glazing to make sure that they are acceptable before any occupation goes ahead. And the officer recommendation here is to permit.
Thank you, Angus. We've got no public speakers on this item, but we do have a statement from the local councillor, Councillor Sarah Moore, which Karina will be kind enough to read out.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I'm able to attend today's planning meeting. However, I would like to express my concern over this application. These are the reasons I have cited in my objection as to why I believe this application should not be permitted. The plans have not significantly changed since the previous application, which was refused, other than the removal of the roof light and rearranging the layout of the bedrooms on the upper floor. It also appears to be adding a window, the type of which has not been identified. The unobscured windows in the main communal living area will directly overlook and open out into the car park of the doctor's surgery, therefore providing no privacy for the occupants or visitors to the doctor's surgery. The obscured windows provide no outlook for the occupants in those rooms at all. I also objected on the following policy grounds, which I believe are relevant to this application. Point 1, I believe this application contravenes Bain's placemaking policy, plan policy H2 criteria. That's 3, that HMO use significantly harms the amenity of adjoining residents through a loss of privacy, visual and noise intrusion. The side of this building directly overlooks the neighbouring garden with no fencing buffer, and windows that open will impact on the neighbours' privacy and increase of noise. 5, the HMO use results in the unacceptable loss of accommodation in a locality in terms of mix, size and type. And 6, the development prejudices the continued commercial use of ground lower floors. This is a change of use from a doctor's surgery to a residential property at a time of limited access to a doctor or NHS facilities. This property was previously used as a dentist, access to which is also severely limited, and this change would remove the opportunity of either of these facilities within a high residential area. There is currently an application for a pharmacy being considered which would occupy this site, as we have lost all pharmacies in our area. Point 2, it also contravenes policy D6 criteria. A, allow existing and proposed development to achieve appropriate levels of privacy, outlook and natural light. B, not cause significant harm to the amenities of existing or proposed occupiers of or visitors to residential or other sensitive premises by reason of loss of light, increased noise, smell, overlooking traffic or other disturbance. Obscured windows will provide no outlook for the tenants of the HMO, and the tilt windows will provide no privacy for the neighbouring directly adjoining property. C, allow for provision of adequate and usable private or communal amenity space and defensible space. There is no outside space for the occupants to use, and the entrance is directly onto a narrow pavement adjoining the neighbouring property. And that concludes the statement from Councillor Sarah Moore.
Thank you, Karina. We'll open up to questions for Angus, Dan, of course, who's here, and also Chris. So anybody wish to ask a question? Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Angus,
Don't flatter me.
Sorry?
Don't flatter me.
Oh, Vice Chair. Temporary Chair. Angus, I'm interested in the sandwiching test on this one. I note that in our 2022 planning document, we do say that where there's a narrow separating road between HMOs, we still consider the sandwiching test to apply. And I don't know whether you can put the plan back up again with the sandwich, because we can see there's that number 10 next to the current HMO. The living room, as I understand it, which faces out over the car park, and therefore, you know, if it's open, given they've got no outdoor space to sit at, might create noise, it's going to go straight out towards number 10. So I'm really interested in understanding why the sandwiching test doesn't apply here, because although there's a car park, it's quite a lot of potential impact.
Yeah, fair point. Definitely fair consideration to give. The sandwiching test, in this case, the document that you mentioned, 2022 HMO SPD, gives us an example where a small track or a small driveway really wouldn't form a significant enough gap. I'm not aware of any hard and fast rule for, you know, X number of metres would be acceptable or not acceptable. Really, it's a case-by-case basis. In this case, it's a manoeuvrable car park. You know, it's a residential street with footpath on both sides, car parking spaces. There's already some activity and some noise in that area anyway with the comings and goings. And with the space there, the officer in this case has considered it to be acceptable. But of course, you're the decision maker today, and your considerations can apply there.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes, you got my eye.
Thank you. A couple of questions, please. First of all, could you clarify the parking situation? There is a car park in Warren Close, but my understanding is that isn't a public car park. I don't believe this would have any parking provision at all, this HMO.
That's my understanding as well, that there's no proposed parking for vehicles, just the bicycle parking, which is in line with our policy ST7. We don't have a minimum requirement for vehicle parking spaces, just bicycle parking, and they are compliant with that policy. But my understanding is that none are proposed as part of this.
So where is the bicycle parking?
Bicycle parking is to be in their outdoor courtyard space, so on the proposed ground floor plan you can see it up on the top edge of the image. I appreciate annotation is quite difficult to read on this image, but it's within the courtyard space, the same courtyard space where the ventilation and extraction equipment is to be removed in the left image.
Is that wide enough?
Yes, I don't have measurements to hand, but yes.
Okay.
On the right-hand image you can see a car parked further down the alleyway, just to provide a little bit of width context.
Okay, thank you. The second question, so this has been empty, I believe, for 3 years?
That's my understanding as well.
Okay. So during those 3 years, has there been any attempts to find another use for it, either in a medical or commercial or community use?
I don't have enough information to hand to answer that question, just that it has been empty for those years. It was previously occupied by a dentist surgery who has moved on. There is a different dentist surgery in the area, but what is important to note is the doctor surgery themselves are the applicant in this case, so it is them coming forward to say, this is underutilised space, we would like to change it, but I'm not aware of any marketing information to hand.
I don't know, obviously with a doctor's surgery, what is it does it come under the classification of commercial space? So they would have to demonstrate that they'd marketed it.
It's classified as Class E3, so yes, it would have been subject to that test, which, bear with me, let me find the right section of the officer report. Policy LCR1, where it's the community facility, not a commercial, it's the community facility being changed away. And in this case, where it's been vacant, where the particular dentist has relocated themselves elsewhere in the city, the officer has found it to be acceptable in this instance.
Sorry, I haven't quite followed that. So, is there a requirement for it to have been marketed or not?
No, LCR1 doesn't require marketing. It has other tests which are that there is already adequate existing local provision of facilities of equivalent value, or alternative facilities of equivalent value that are provided in the locality, or the proposed loss is an integral part of changes by a public service provider, such as the NHS, which would improve the overall quality or accessibility of public services in the locality. And I think the officer deals with this in the first section of their officer assessment bit under the principle of use, where they say it's been established through the previous applications that have been on this site. Bearing in mind the previous application wasn't refused on the principle of the loss of the doctor's surgery, so to be consistent, unless something had changed, we would have to take a similar view. That the wing of the building subject to the proposed change of use has not been in use as a dentist for some time, and that the rooms have been stripped of equipment and furniture. The applicants also confirmed that the particular service was relocated to Rush Hill. There is also another dentist facility next to the site, as you've seen on the site visit, and therefore the loss of the space was considered overall acceptable in this instance.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more questions? Councillor Jackson.
I was wondering if the officer could explain the difference between a doctor's surgery which is basically NHS, and I'm not sure they're allowed to provide private services anymore, and a dental practice, which is a private business which may or may not have a contract to take NHS patients. Does this not mean there's a difference of status between the two uses of a community use by the doctor, provided by the doctors, and a private use by a potential dentist, which is that not a commercial use?
Some dentists are commercial, some are still NHS. I'm not sure in this particular instance which one the old one was. My apologies, just that it was a dentist, the facility has relocated and there is another one nearby. They fall under Class E, both types, but apologies, that's the best I can give. Apologies.
I think whether it's private or public, the consideration is about the use of the land, not so much the distinction between public and private. So I would limit your considerations to the use of the land in this regard.
Thank you. Have we got any more questions before we move on to consider the merits of the application? No. Okay. Does anybody wish to start off expressing their views on the application? Anybody? Councillor Malloy.
Just to say that, as I understand it, this is sort of a backup plan for the surgery, and they would prefer to have a pharmacy there, but given that that's not a settled matter at the moment, this is what they have presented, rather than have it empty and not doing anything at all. I'm inclined to support the application.
Okay, yeah, that's a crucial point. There may be a backup plan, but we have to consider the application that's before us. Are you putting forward a motion to support the application at this stage, or do you want to hear the rest of the debate before doing so?
Carry on debating, please.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, on the plus point, it's nice to see an HMO that isn't taking away a family home. So it gets a tick for that. And to bring into use a building that's been empty for 3 years. So there are some positives in this one. My areas of concern are areas to do with privacy and overlooking the car park for a doctor's surgery does affect people's privacy when they're using that. The parking I consider to be an issue. There are no parking provisions here, and parking seems to be at a premium in this location. And obviously it was built for community use, and ideally we'd like to see it back in community use. So I'm a little bit on the fence on this one, but I can see some benefits.
Councillor Collins and then Councillor Jack.
Thank you. Yes, I too have some doubts about this one. I mean, it does look internally as if it's a reasonable size, unlike some HMOs that we've seen. I am concerned, though, that we may not be applying the sandwiching test as rigorously as we could do. I worry about the house that is next to an HMO and then overlooked by this one, which isn't very far away. I'm conscious that as there is no outdoor space apart from a very narrow alleyway that, as we saw on the site visit, has a high wall, that on a hot summer's afternoon when the doctor's surgery is closed, the temptation for the inhabitants for the HMO will be to open the windows and possibly even drag their furniture outside into what will at that point be an empty car park, creating quite a lot of noise actually for number 10, which already has an HMO on the other side. So I'm really not 100% sure. I'd be interested in what other people think, but I think I'm tending towards not wanting to support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I think that Councillor Moore has made a very good case for us to refuse this application. It seems to me, just putting it in plain Yorkshire, it's overdevelopment of the site, having 4 HMO-style studio flats here. there's an unacceptable loss of amenity to the residents of the surrounding properties, and it's also the loss of an employment site. And for those reasons alone, and the ones in Councillor Moore's statement, I would propose that we reject this application.
Could I ask a question of Chris, please, on this point? It has been refused previously, but that was only on amenity grounds. So, are we in dangerous territory if we're introducing new reasons for refusal in terms of the principle of the use, what we didn't do before?
Certainly there is an imperative for the Council to act with consistency in its decision-making. That doesn't mean it has to make identical decisions, but if you are departing from a previous decision, you have to give adequate reasons for doing so. So in this instance, pointing to changes in the scheme, you could say, well, those changes may have had a different impact. But so certainly if you were going down the route of concerns about amenity, you could say that those issues haven't been overcome. On the issues of principle of the change of use or the loss of the community facility, those, I can't really myself see any change to any of those issues, so it would be difficult for us to have not refused it previously on those grounds and then to introduce that now, and that could potentially be perceived as unreasonable behaviour if this were taken to an appeal. But certainly, in listening to the debate, I can hear some of the concerns about amenity, and that is certainly, something that is within your gift to consider sort of afresh within this application.
Thank you. Do you want to come back, Councillor Jackson?
I have always thought in my 18 years on this committee that we should consider each application on its own merits, sui generis, as presenting facts that may or may not have been stated before. And I think on the basis of what is on the table here, we have appropriate grounds for refusing it. There have been some attempts, and for that the applicant should be applauded, to meet the objections of the previous application. But I think really, in a way, Councillor Hughes has put his finger on it. We do not have the evidence that any attempt was made to market this facility as a commercial employment property or as a community facility. We just don't have that. So, I think we've got no alternative but to refuse. And I think Councillor Moore stated the case very well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Warren, you raise your hand.
Yeah, did you want to get a seconder first, though, Chair?
Well, no one's put anything on the table just yet. Councillor, you put forward a motion to go against the officer's recommendation. Okay. Do you want to second that? No. Any seconds that motion at the moment? Councillor Hughes, you do. Okay, we'll take a vote on that in a second. Simon, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I'm more favourably disposed to this, and I was going to structure the debate by moving the acceptance of the officer's recommendation, but I've been
You've been beaten to it.
Beaten to it. I think that the surgery will have made every effort to look at healthcare use, and it's worth noting that the surgery is almost certainly a private organisation in itself, under contract to the NHS. It's got to look at its commercial interests. It's not required under policy to seek marketing of the property, but I'm sure it will have done its best to look at uses which are compatible. I don't think this property is compatible with single-family use because it doesn't have outdoor or amenity space. But if officers are satisfied that it offers a reasonable level of facility as an HMO in a highly sustainable location with a very frequent bus service running at the end of the close, I'm satisfied that this is proper to approve. So I'll be supporting the officer recommendation.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take a vote in a second on Councillor Jackson's motion. My full penneth on this one is, I think I agree with some of the points that have been raised about the sandwiching, and particularly, the use of the space outside. I am concerned about the fact that it's not just it's an HMO. If it was two flats, perhaps, that will certainly contribute to our housing and land supply as well, rather than just being individual rooms in a communal area. And yes, there are concerns about, even though we've got obscure glazing, I do feel maybe there are still going to be some amenity issues for the residents of that property. So that's my view on that. So we'll go to a vote. So all those in favour... Sorry. Of course, because we'll have any reason for refusal, won't we, if it goes that way.
Just to clarify the motion as I've understood it, so I'm going to distill it a little bit into the core, I think, two areas, which was sort of unacceptable loss of amenity via overdevelopment of the site. And I've heard, from the debate, I've heard points around the impact of the use of the car park on the occupiers of the HMO, impact on the neighbours, number 10, potential sandwiching sort of issues arising with across the other side of the car park. There was also mention of about the tightness of the amenity space afforded to this unit. So those things I'm sort of satisfied are an arguable case. There was the second part, which is about this loss of employment land, and I think I just need to put a health warning on that part of the motion, in that this is not an existing employment site in terms of its category. It is a community facility. As we've heard, the requirement for marketing is that there's not a requirement for marketing when it comes to community facilities. Those other tests that I outlined previously are the ones, and we haven't previously refused it on that. So I do think there would be an issue with us refusing on those grounds. Obviously, it is within your gift to do that, but my advice is that that is reconsidered and that the motion is focused solely on those amenity concerns that you've all highlighted.
Councillor Jackson, would you be happy to go with the amenity reasons only?
Sorry, what about...
Would you be content to go with the amenity reasons only, based on the advice that Chris has just given?
Well, I think also that Councillor Moore was making the point it was contrary to policy, and at the end of the day, it's policy that counts, is it not? And I would say it's an employment site, whether it's commercial or community.
Yes, certainly it would have employed people, but in terms of categorising it for the application of the relevant policy in this case, it is considered a community facility and not a it's not a previous B1 use or a B2 use or a B8 use. Those are the employment uses to which our employment policies apply, and that so it would be an error, I think, possibly even an error in law if we were to apply the employment policies to this use. So it's very strongly my advice we don't go down that route. But as I said, on the amenity grounds, that would be something you can make your judgment on, and we would be able to defend as officers potentially.
Okay, so you're happy to go with that. You're happy to go with that as well, Councillor Hughes, as the seconder?
Yeah, but have we included... I mean, I think Councillor Collins made a very important point about the sandwiching and the sandwiching assessment. So as long as you've got that, that's fine.
Right, we'll go to the vote then on Councillor...
Another point, I know I argued against this one in the previous application, but should we not also have some measure of consistency in our decision-making if it was refused before?
Well, it was refused on amenity grounds previously, and obviously that's the motion you're putting forward this time round. Angus?
Well, it was refused on amenity grounds last time, but only for the future occupiers of the property. It wasn't refused on amenity impact on others. Just wanted to clarify that quickly.
But we actually do feel, with this application, that there will be an amenity impact on neighbours. I've alluded from the debate that we've been having. Okay, Councillor Jackson put forward a motion to overturn the officer recommendation, seconded by Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Four. And those against? So that motion has not been carried. We have a second motion. Councillor Simon, you want to go with the recommendation?
Count was?
The count was 4 in favour of the motion, 5 against, so that motion has not been carried.
In which case I will move that we adopt the officer recommendation.
Does that get a second? Councillor McPhee, anything to say on that? You're just happy to second that. Anybody else before we go to the final vote? No. Yeah, Councillor Warren.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I mean, I kind of get all the fors and against here. The only thing is, it's been empty for 3 years. It's a decent building, you need some use of it in the area. And I think just sometimes, because we get a lot of HMOs that come forward, which are not literally not room to swing a cat, well, at least there's a bit of room in this one, which I think, to me, just probably turns me in favour of it.
Okay, so all those in favour of supporting the motion to support the officer recommendation? I'm actually changing my mind. So that's 6 in favour. Those against? 3. So the motion's been carried and planning permission has been granted. Do we need to go and find the chair? If we have a little slight adjournment and we can get the chair back in to finish off the meeting.
Okay, it's like playing musical chairs, isn't it? We are on the final items of the agendas this morning, sorry. We're still morning. And the next item on the agenda is the appeals report. This in front of you. Do members have any questions at all on the appeals report? Councillor Simon?
Just to note that the appeal decision in relation to Richmond Road was a planning committee decision where the appeal was allowed. And admittedly, I voted in favour of this application at committee and was outvoted. But I do think it's important that that members should look at planning decisions where the committee was overturned. So I would suggest that officers might make a practice of circulating decisions in these cases, and certainly in this case it would be helpful if you could circulate to members so that we can see what the arguments that were overturned as were.
Certainly we can do that.
Councillor Warren?
Yeah, I think if you send out where the committee's decisions were overturned, you probably ought to send out as well, in fairness, that when the committee's decisions were agreed with.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, is that agreed by everybody? Yes, Councillor Malloy?
I have another question. I don't know if you can, one of the officers can answer it, about the forthcoming hearing to do with the parcel of land at Dean Hill Lane, which is scheduled to be on the 14th of October. So do you know, generally speaking, how many days are allowed for something like that? Do you know? I mean, is it likely to be 1 day, 2 days, the rest of that week?
I don't know the specifics on this one, but having some knowledge of the case, I would imagine it's a 1-day hearing, but I can get the case officer to advise you if that's incorrect. And I would assume it's a 1-day hearing, otherwise it would potentially be suggesting more on the agenda here.
Yeah, thank you. If that would be welcome, because it's not in my ward, but it's adjacent to it, and I've had lots of residents.
Okay, can I ask committee to report, please? Just noted. Okay, thank you. The dates of the next meetings are Wednesday the 17th and Wednesday 24th September 2025. If any site visits are required for the 24th September meeting to take place on the 15th of September, you've all received notification of a site visit on the 10th of September as well, so please make sure that's in your diaries. Now it's open where we're having meetings. The public will be interested in the 17th